Malcolm Richby, Department of Sociology, Human Services and Criminal Justice, Henderson State University, Arkadelphia, United States.
Thank you. Yeah, what's one of our big social issues in the world today, especially in the United States? Recidivism. Right? America's got the largest prison system in the United States, in the world. On any day, the United States, if we look at people that are locked in jails, state prisons, federal prisons, we're looking at around 2 to 2 million people incarcerated in behind bars in the United States. If we look at the numbers of those that are being released to society, just kind of a rule of thumb, it depends on the type of crime. Property crime, drug crimes being the highest recidivism rates. We can look at people that are released 3 years. We're looking at around maybe a third of those, maybe half of those, and some of those categories will be recidivists, back in prison, back in the system. If we go out 5 years, we're looking upwards to 3/4 of those who recidivate that are released today. 5 years from now, 3/4 of those will be locked back up. So a big issue, and so back in 2012, I became very interested in doing some research in this area, and I conducted a study in a state prison, and I had gone through the material over the years and written on it and thought about it and tried to determine what is going on in prison, what can we do from a standpoint of a society, because this is definitely one of those social debts. Going back to our key statement this morning, that would come along with the prosperity of the United States. The debt is that we have locked so many people up. And once they get into the system, it's very hard for them to get out of the system. So my first study area was just trying to understand the role of religion and conversion in prison and prosocial outcomes in identity. Who am I as an individual? How do I relate with the world about me? How do I relate with other people, individuals? And so prison as a subculture is one of those areas that creates a confinement. It's like a box. Within a box, like an iron cage, as Max Weber, the sociologist, said, you're free to roam about in the box and with certain constraints and boundaries that keep you regulated and in order. Let me skip forward here just a second, because I wanted to mention this as a backdrop. Some of the basic things that came to me from the earlier study was that there is a process by which individuals go through conversion in prison. The prison experience itself is a severe strain. If you're familiar with theorist Agnew, strain are those tensions and so forth that cause us to make adjustments in our life, and they play out in anger. They may also turn out in a point of bottoming out, a point where you have to find a new way. Something's got to change. Okay? It may be that prison is a source of managing your day for safety. It may be that prison becomes something that liberates you, because of the individuals that I interviewed, and these were their narrative stories. I actually got to speak with the individuals themselves and tell me what it was that was going on in their lives. Those that decided that they wanted to change their lives rather than just manage their experience created within themselves, through the prison, through the experience, through this bottoming out, a desire to change their self. What is it about me that I can do differently? And that coincided with their meeting with an individual. It might have been 2 or 3 individuals. But in these narratives, and it took me a while to realize what they were talking about when they kept saying helpers, 98% of these people talked about the value of a helper in their prison conversion experience. So as I looked through all the various terminologies and concepts that were used in these 2.5-hour interviews with multiple individuals, key words and thoughts started to play out. Okay, so this developed my understanding of how it was that people face strain in prison, in the prisonization experience, created a desire among those that wanted to change their life, how that coincided or met up with somebody that would be instrumental in their life as a teacher, and that led to their transformation. Okay? So let me go back to this last slide. All right, alpha. 3 years after the first level of data, I'm going back through reading again, all this stuff, right? And for the first time, this statement that Alpha made to me made a new level of sense. We always searching, seeking to find who we are. And here you got a name, convict, prisoner. There was a whole list of living, okay? That's what I am, a prisoner. And by the way, if I slip in here once in a while and start talking about these people as prisoners rather than inmates, it's because virtually everyone have told me that's who we are, called us that. And I believe in liberating them through their ability to speak and just, to explain who they are. I'm not an inmate, but as a prisoner, I need change. Prison made me realize change or die. All right, so there's management versus change of self. This is my third time up. First time I didn't change. I got mean, okay? I got mean. You have to survive, right? It was a 3-year bit, 3-year time bit. Second time the same, but I changed in here. School, education, chaplaincy. He had his first religious experience in his second time up, okay? Then I paroled out, I got home, nothing I learned about myself or religion changed. Things were the same out there. I came back, what am I? I'm labeled an ex-convict. I'm a drug user. I'm a criminal. I'm a bad person. These labels reattached, okay? No job, no church. People watched me. They turned up their noses. For long, I was back on the street hustling. Here I am on an extended bit, okay? This was a 15-year term he was in for now. He was getting ready to be able to parole out. I've changed this time. He was back in with the chaplaincy, okay? He brought the religious experience back into his life. It was helping him manage life, helping him determine who he was. Meet every Friday for prayer sometime during the week. Soon I'll be out, but it'll be, okay, defeatist, right? It'll be just like it was last time. And that's what caught me when I read that sentence. Because he'd done this twice. It's going to be the same. Soon I'll be out, but it'll be like the last time. No help, just hit the street, Jack. Won't have nobody, and we'll have to do it all again. Just to make it, right? Just to survive. It's wrong. There is no connection to keep your way of life in prison, in the world. In other words, what you got in prison, you can't take with you. So we would say, why are the recidivism rates so high? Okay? Why is, and sometimes religion and spirituality, the chaplaincy, like, if there's going to be cuts in programs in prison, just like the free world, education is first, but chaplaincy is next. Okay? It just happens. We've gone through that time and time again in the prison system. And so a lot of times, oh, well, yeah, they're just changing so that they'll have a good life in prison. They really haven't changed. That's, and what data substantiates it, right? Hey, look, here's the recidivism rates. They didn't change. So what he said there resonated to me. He said, I go out, it doesn't matter what I've done to change. I'm just another number. I hit back on the street, I'm an ex-con, okay? So hold that. Going back to my flow chart, I said, I got to looking at it, and I started reading all of these narratives and thinking about, is there anything else in here that's common to what Alpha said? 98% of them talked about basically the same, and I just glossed over it the first time. Because I was focusing on the conversion experience in prison. But they were telling me what had gone wrong when they walked out their door, because 95% of them were recidivists, 2-3 times back. Okay? And every time they told me what happened, they got out, the relationship that they had made with this helper in prison that had helped them to build their life prosocially. All right, now again, we're looking at the group that really wanted to change, right? Individuals that made their minds, I want to change. They had that relationship with that helper. The helper taught them religion, traditions, gave them support, motivated, instilled in them commitment, taught them, inspired them, pressured them. In other words, they were a holistic helper. In other words, you're doing wrong. Call it to your attention. Do this, change, etc. Making them accountable, making them understand they have duty to themselves, to others. Okay? So, they all talked about helpers in prison, but when they got out and talked about their experience in release, nobody mentioned helpers. Helpers disappeared. Boxes are controls in prison. They limit us. It's a box. Everybody gets watched. It's an invisible line. You don't step over it. If you step over it, there is going to be some sort of consequence, okay? So you walk the walk. If you're a hypocrite in prison, you suffer for it. Tell the truth to the people that you deal with. Be with the group. Be loyal to the group. If it's a clique, if it's a gang, whatever it is, okay? But this one was meaningful right here. Choosing religion means to get real because you're going to get tested. Everybody watches you all the time. Guards, other cons, chaplains, everybody. Can't hide. If you're not real, you suffer. Like joining a gang, you're tested. Blood in, banging in, you're real. Okay? Try to leave, and you got blood out or death. Exception, he said. If you really have something that changes and it deals with chaplaincy, if it deals with your understanding of religion, of God, of desire to be like the divine, to have that promise, whatever it may be, in whichever religion, because I was comparing in my control group Muslims and Christians, okay, and it was a broad category, but I wanted to do something that was comparative. When it comes to religious experience, when you change, they said, if you really want to change, until that you've got God, you go tell the man. Now they're talking about the leader of the gang or the clique, the person who calls the shots in the prison setting. If you're real, irregardless if it's blood out, if you're real when it comes to your spirituality, because that is so internalized into who you are, your religious experience in the divine, they'll honor that. He says they're still going to watch you. Because if you do mess up, you're going to be held accountable. Right? If you slip up in your religion, you've conned them. And there are consequences. Blood out, death, etc. Okay? So, what's a good helper? I had to go back and read a lot of stuff again. Okay? These are just a few very descriptive ones here. My helper was a good box. Kept me in line and accountable. Teach me respect through change and learning duty to others. Love Allah. This was Muslim convert. Helpers, you got to have someone who trusts you, but knows you can mess up, but they still watch you and help you head off if you're on the wrong course. My helper helped me overcome labels and give good labels. Helpers are more than teachers and listeners. They keep you accountable to you. Okay, here's self. Okay, self-identity starting to pop out here. To you and the community, your social identity, right, with others. You got to understand yourself, then you got to understand others about you. Like my religious group, we sometimes meet inside chapel, but your helper is always there. Right? So there's a difference between the religious experience, the learning experience of the tradition, etc., and then the spiritual side that this teacher, this learning type theory, differential association that they've met up with. Watches them, counsels them, teaches them love, respect, duty, practice in daily life with others. And this thing right here came up in so many different words. You got to love yourself. You got to respect yourself. And then once you do that, then you can start to learn to love others and respect others. Okay? We're talking about people that have been pushed down. Okay? And this is the group of people, though, that want to change that. Okay? Not by force, not by gangs, etc., just to manage the situation, but actually change themselves. Okay? Quotes on boxes. Boxes are controls, I mentioned. Controls can be like labels or shaming. Anybody familiar with shaming theory? Shaming can be good. Shaming can be bad. Shaming can be, you call the attention of someone and you call it, okay, now you're a convict. You're an arrestee. That's shaming. You've done something wrong. Think about it. It can be disintegrative. We don't equip those that want to change with the ability to change. We don't support their change. That's disintegrative. Reintegrative is then when you give them assistance because they've said, hey, I realize I've changed, I've done something wrong, I want to change, and then you help trying to build them up. Okay, so it can be disintegrative or it can be reintegrative. Japanese society is very reintegrative, so American society tends to be very, and most Western society tends to be very disintegrative. We stick those labels, as Joel Best said. I think theirs is more fear than anything. Now, this is a disintegrative example, talking about his experience in church after release. There's more fear than anything. They don't get close to you because they doubt who you are. Okay? You're out of prison. You're a new number. You're just one of those people that came out. You're one of those recidivists, right? And everybody knows the recidivism rate is high. You feel like you're on the outside, you're shut out, they close people out, like you're so much different, you're othering, okay? You're pushed back. Examples. A friend of mine went to the church, we're in two different factions. Yes, we should have this type of program with people that are coming out of prison. No, we shouldn't have the church split. Okay? This one is really good, Tau. I gave all of them just Greek letter names, okay? That is why 80% of the people are back in prison. It's because that they lack the love, so where do they go? Okay? You go back out, you're just a number, you're another releasee. While you were in prison, remember you had that helper, somebody that got close to you, held you accountable, gave you a baseline, could measure against, you could talk to. They know something about your experience or whatever it's been since your conversion that you're trying to change and that you have made progress. You lose that when you walk out the door because that helper's still in prison. Or if they were a volunteer, no telling where the volunteer came from. And we know that most people that when they get out of prison, they release to their home cities. Or if it's on parole, they're directed to go back to their home cities. That helper, that volunteer that was coming in chaplaincy and so forth, that was working with you, may be from some other city. So your paths never cross again. Okay? Think about that. So where do you go? Back to drugs, alcohol, gangs, because you didn't have any acceptance. You're completely pushed down, you're retested again, you're nothing again. Prove to me that you've changed. Okay? Wouldn't it be great if they had that same helper, that person from the outside coming in volunteering that knew them, that was from their city where they're probably going to release to, so that when they did release, they had somebody to vouch for them, a real person. We were talking about that a while ago, the identity of real people, okay, that ability to relate, to know more than just the visual screen of somebody online or something. Then they go back to multiple releases, right? They start recidiving, right? It's, why keep trying? I might as well go back and shoot some dope. So by associating or whatever, they're back into that circle again, right? Okay. So let's kind of pull this together right quick. Helpers, controls, right? Boxes are controls. Helpers teach. Helpers can be controls. Helpers watch you, just like controls watch you. But helpers also provide you with pathways. They provide you with knowledge, understanding of the religion, its traditions. There's soundboards for spirituality. They talk about prayer. They may pray with you, etc., okay? Every one of them said, except for one, and the one person that didn't say this happened to be a first-timer. They hadn't gone out and experienced it yet, okay? Every one of them, in different words, said we need more connection inside out with volunteers. Now, there's some areas in religious services and chaplaincy that we are totally way understaffed in volunteers. Some religions are virtually nil. It's hard for chaplains to find sometimes people that will come in and volunteer for a lot of religions. But we need helpers that are going to have that connection. Just like I mentioned a while ago, we need people from released cities that are willing to go in prisons in their locations, their geographic regions, and work with those individuals that are undergoing transformation through their religious experience and conversions, with the chaplaincy, with education programs, etc., that are showing those changes. Work with those people 6 months or a year so that they have a baseline with that individual, so that when they parole back out that city, they've got somebody can vouch for them. I know this person. They have changed. I've watched them in more ways than one, okay? That helps to relieve the individual's strain when they release to a city, and again, they don't know anybody, basically in education, health care, transportation, job training, counseling, group transition groups that sit around and discuss their dilemmas and needs, and so they don't know any of those people, right? Who do they know? They know the people they got in trouble with, right, when they were sent to jail. So those strains of being pressured and pushed at and say, oh, you're just another number, prove to me that you've changed. Because, hey, we know everybody, we know 75% recidivate, right? Prove to me you've changed, and then we'll give you the extra individual, personal comfort that the helper would provide within the prison setting. So they all said we need people on the outside that know which prisoners are going to release to their communities, so that those community helpers could go into those prisons, work with those people, and give them that support, that necessary support when they release, that they don't have those such monumental strains that they wind back going to the dope, the old group, etc. Okay? So that's basically what I reiterate here. We've got two levels of this that's going on in this healthy relationship. The testing and watching helps to moderate the labels with people that will help you to moderate those labels, so that those labels of ex-con and so forth, health pressures of proving yourself don't become too burdensome, and you suffer so much strain and tension that you go back to your old acquaintances. Because they go back to their old acquaintances, and even if they haven't done anything with those acquaintances, the police officer sees them on the beat. Oh, you're back with the same old group. Be a few days, I'll pick you up, see you later. You know, I've heard police officers say that to people, right? So, enhances prosocial self-controls. Remember self-control? You have self-control leads to social control. Learn self, love self, duty to self, responsibility to self. Then you start taking care of community about you. So you can't let what's been created within the prison be broken by the experience. We need that bridge in transition. Okay? We've got great community programs out there. Tulsa, Oklahoma's got a great one. Little Rock's got a good one. They go into the prisons and they're actually catching people, but only weeks before they parole out. Okay? They go in, have a little interview with them. Yeah, when you get out, come see me. They haven't developed that helper relationship. Okay? So we've got some great programs on the outside, community reintegration. Okay? We've got wonderful programs through volunteer programs, and I think primarily centered in the chaplaincy, because that seems to be what I've found. Okay, it's valuable. But we're not putting them together. We're not getting that relationship with them. Is that going to cost a lot of money? Probably. But it's got a lot of volunteer work too. And one thing I found about volunteers, people that volunteer to go in prisons normally do it because they feel very strongly about it, not because it's something new to experience. Right? So a lot of times money is secondary. And there are other sources. The community programs where they get out there have got funds like transportation, job training, and how to get you in contact to get your driver's license back. They've got those types of things there. But what they don't have is that helping relationship, so that they say, you know, old John who comes into your prison told me about you and said, you know, he's known you now for a year and has really been impressed by your change. That's sometimes what makes the difference, right? That human individual quality. How are we doing on time?
Good, good.
Okay. So, are we together now on what my thought is at this point? I'm pressing forward to try to do a pilot test. Okay? I'd like to do 4 or 5 state prisons in different corners. I've got one that's willing to do it in the Northwest. I think I've got one in Central. So I need 3, maybe more, 2 or 3 more. 2 or 3 release cities, okay? In other words, major cities that people release to within those prisons. You know, if we're thinking Texas, Dallas, Houston, right? You know, big areas that we would think there's going to be lots of people reduced to because of their crime rates and so forth, sending people to prison. Got 2, okay, in one jurisdiction. So that's still lacking. Multiple helpers. Okay, so then within those release cities, release destinations, need people that have connections with community outlets of support. In other words, community reintegration programs that teach financial management, education, right? Gets them into the community college if they have started a degree or something, healthcare, religious services, get them in with a receptive group in a community that is willing to work with them in that context. Counseling, might be anger, depression management still needs to be carried on. Transportation needs, necessities, food, etc. Male, females have different needs, right? So there's a lot of those things that need to be addressed from that standpoint. But the helper would have these contacts, but the helper would be primarily making their volunteer efforts known within the prison, where certain individuals that were selected, hopefully randomly and so forth as best we could, but had experienced religious transformation were experiencing prosocial outcomes and changing their identity while in prison, and that they would work for them. Hopefully, we would have time to work with them a year so that they would have a good baseline of communication with their helper. So that when that individual then did parole out to that release destination, that helper's already there to vouch for them. If the person in job training that's trying to get them into the job says, yeah, okay, let me call old John over here across town and tell me, you know, John, what'd you find out about Joe? Right? And of course we know, you know, this is not just a male thing, right? Prisons in America are growing quickly in female populations. And it's a lot of it's ethnic. So we need ethnic people. We need people that know cultural backgrounds as well as religious transit, traditions and so forth. So it's a very broad, holistic approach, interdisciplinary. Okay, let's say we can get all that to pull together. It needs to be longitudinal, right? Take the time, right? We've already said 3 years and 5 years for recidivism. So part of that measure over a 5-year period would be educational attainment, job advancement. Have they got another degree? Have they moved up in their job? Have they changed jobs but they were able to elevate their income and social ability? Have they been involved in counseling and support groups? I sat on a group of men in transition, and they just sit around and talk about their problems that they experienced the last week or two. Organized religious activities, whichever religion. Again, we're not looking at the truth of religion, but what does religion do for people? You know, we talked this morning. There was a slide on the golden rule and how it spreads through as a thread. Right? I don't know if you read anything of some of Karen Armstrong's discussions on the golden rule and so forth, and how that plays in. But the main measure would be, of course, rates. How many of these people over a 5-year period recidivate compared to what we know the numbers are at large? In other words, we want assistance. We want them to move out of crime, out of their criminality, to control that even if they have impulses. How many still have impulses, for example, but they just don't do it because they've got support? I mean, that would be something that would be of interesting output in this study. But then, of course, the pudding is how many recidivate. So a third recidivate in 3 years. Right? It'd be time consuming, but I think it's a very valuable one because I really think that this is probably one of our biggest social problems when it comes to the human commodity. So money, yeah. But like I said a while ago, volunteers in prisons are there because they really believe in what they're doing. If you've ever been in a prison, worked in a prison, done any time in a prison in a social context, you know that it's not for everybody. And there's a different sound of the world when that door slams shut and you're waiting for the next one to open before you can go forward. And you can't go back, right, until the end of the day. And they're there all the time. So I'm putting that up there. I'll send anybody that wants it a copy of this PowerPoint. I'll email you anything I've got, so forth. I need contacts. So if any of you know people in prisons, community reintegration programs, volunteers, chaplains, okay? I'd love to hear from you because I need to make contacts right now. That's what's got to happen, get this to pull together. And then I think the money will work some way. Okay? That's what I got. Thank you so much.
Great.